What is going on, Cardano community? Welcome back to the Dapp Central YouTube channel. My name is Fareed, and today I'm joined by Diego Towers from the official MAYZ Protocol. Good morning, Diego. How you doing?
Good morning. Excellent. I'm pretty excited to be here.
Yes, thank you for your time. This is a long time coming. Today we're going to be chatting about the MAYZ protocol and what you guys are building and prepping for the Cardano community. So before we jump into today's video, I want to give the viewers a brief overview of what we'll be discussing, and then we're going to jump into a little bit of your background, and then we're going to run through this list of questions here surrounding the MAYZ protocol. So the first thing we're going to do is just get a brief overview of the MAYZ protocol, and then we're going to jump into some of the benefits as well as some of the differences in terms of investing vehicles that the MAYZ protocol and platform is bringing, and then exactly how the MAYZ protocol is going to go ahead and enable users to create, manage, and invest in Cardano funds. Very lastly, we're going to talk about security, governance, and then the future development and the future vision that Diego has for this platform. So without taking up any more time, Diego, do you mind giving us a little bit of background surrounding how you came into crypto and exactly what the MAYZ protocol is?
Well, great. Yes, for sure. As most of us, I just came into the space in a bull market. It was 2017, mid June, and I that's when I bought my first $500 in crypto assets, and then well through the bull market, then the crash market, and after that I started studying crypto more seriously. First, I start with a white paper for the Bitcoin white paper. I read that, I studied Bitcoin, and then I fall in love with Bitcoin. So from 2018, I've been studying and trying to understand other technologies, not only Bitcoin, of course. And by 2021, I end up in Cardano, launching RatsDAO, our first project. And after that, I start this amazing project, which is MAYZ, a more challenge project, a DeFi project that I'm going to talk about during this interview. Besides that, I have a podcast. I've been running the podcast for a crypto podcast, of course. You can find it in YouTube. It is a Spanish podcast, and I'm a teacher at universities. I've been teaching university. Right now, I teach crypto at university. I used to teach corporate finance and strategy, and right now I'm teaching only crypto. And well, that's uh, in a nutshell how my professional profile is in general terms.
Got it. That's interesting. Speaking with a fellow content creator, so we have a little bit to relate on in that sense. And I like the fact that you're also a crypto teacher. Again, I can definitely recognize the effort that goes into not only teaching, but teaching such a new technology that is not yet accessible all over the world. So you're really doing a lot of people a huge service when it comes to that. So I just want to say thank you for that. And that aside, you're here to talk about MAYZ. So let's go ahead and just dive right on in. Let's break down what MAYZ is here for the viewers of today's video.
Well, MAYZ was a project that came after RatsDAO. When we built RatsDAO, we wanted to democratize the access to NFTs. Back in the day, getting one space bot or a crypto asset, a blue chip crypto asset in an NFT asset class was expensive for most of the Latin American people. When ADA was $1 and the floor was 5,000, well, $5,000 is a great deal of money here in Latin America to spend in an NFT. So we decided to create a way to democratize the access to this, to get exposure, financial exposure to these amazing new assets that, from my perspective, they will be like a piece of art in the future, very scarce piece of art because they were the first collections. So that was RatsDAO. But after that, we decided that we wanted to move forward and try to bring more accessibility into the financial and Cardano financial ecosystem. So we came up with the idea that a Cardano index was a must for those that were not very involved with Cardano. Getting involved in each of these ecosystem, I'm not only working for Cardano, I also work in Ethereum and Polkadot. So I understand the barrier of entry with, that means to get into a new ecosystem. So those that are pretty into Ethereum, they keep there. Those that are pretty much into Cardano, they keep in Cardano, and so on. So um, trying to bring this exposure to other users that are not the base user of an economy was the idea. So we thought, but that time, that we will create a Cardano index, and we will use the bridges in order to to bring this Cardano exposure to other networks like Polygon and other networks. That was the first idea. um, and then we start working on that idea, and it changed a little bit. Right now, MAYZ is not only about a Cardano index, is more like a financial protocol, a financial infrastructure based on a smart contract that will allow users to create their own funds. Cardano index will be the first one, but not the only one. So basically, what we are focused right now is in building a strong infrastructure that will allow this possibility to democratize the access to financial, but in a broader sense, not only for investors but also for fund manager. For example, if you want to be a fund manager, and you want to do that within the crypto ecosystem, you mostly have to be the custodial guy for the assets, and that's a problem from a regulation from the regulation standpoint, and from a security standpoint. So and of course, trust. You need trust. So yeah, and it's a big responsibility. So we create this protocol to allow people to create the fund, to manage the fund without the custody of the assets. So that's basically the main idea of the protocol, is to make more accessible the financial assets from the demand side and from the offer side, from both sides of the market.
Got it. I've got a few questions here surrounding that. So, if I understand this correctly, MAYZ is going to allow for members within the community, or within the Cardano community, excuse me, to simultaneously invest in multiple Cardano native assets or Cardano native tokens. So, before we jump into exactly how they're able to do that through your platform, you mentioned, some origins tying back to ETH and Polkadot. Again, this is just a sidebar here, but does MAYZ also have plans on going cross-chain?
Yes, yes, but at first was like the first milestone will involve that. Right now, we realize that it's gonna take more time to go cross chain. So the first milestone will involve, or the MVP, which is the piece of software that we are going to launch this September. We'll only have a few assets like Cardano Index and maybe a few more. So we are going to play with this and try to find market fit. The second milestone will allow any user in the Cardano ecosystem to create funds. We will that the second milestone, and the third milestone will be a cross chain. So in the third milestone, you will be able to invest in a fund created by any member from the Cardano ecosystem from another network. That's the third milestone.
I like that third milestone, really diving into the decentralization aspect of what has all brought us here into crypto. I think it makes sense. Obviously, when you guys first launched, maybe kind of hold the community's hand through the process by providing them curated funds. But then as the protocol matures, really decentralizing and allowing for the community to figure out what funds it is that they want to build and what funds it is that they want to invest themselves into. So again, I do appreciate that, and I'm happy to hear that you guys are also thinking about going cross-chain. There's just been so many other projects, and I actually just interviewed the Turf NFT team, which is an NFT project, and they're also going to be branching out to the Polygon network. We've got other platforms like Meld, we've got World Mobile, we've got Book.io. All these teams are now looking to begin bridging outside of Cardano, So I think it's going to be the future. Interoperability is key, especially given that every blockchain has its own strengths, which again, all contributes to our decentralized mission. So thank you for that introduction so far, Diego, into what MAYZ is. Let's talk about the benefits of a platform like MAYZ. So, what makes this different than traditional investment vehicles or traditional investment methods?
Well, first, we are talking about specifically to the Cardano ecosystem. So the first benefit is to bring access to that ecosystem. The complexity of the ecosystem is growing at a fast pace. So we need to make that easier for any investor. If you want to get exposure to the Cardano, you are already, let's say you yourself or myself, we are pretty much into Cardano, into this ecosystem. So we are we have exposure, and we want to have exposure to what is happening in Cardano. But holding ADA doesn't make it, because holding ADA is only a piece of the Cardano ecosystem, a small piece, I may say. Even though in this Web3 ecosystem, the base layer is pretty big and thick in terms of value capturing value, but in the end, the apps, the use case is those that are going to bring value to this ecosystem. So if you want to get exposure to the Cardano, you cannot just hold ADA, and you may not have the time or the interest to start analyzing every and each project and try to understand which one are the good ones, the bad ones, and how to create a balanced portfolio. Smart money in the traditional finance, they use the passive investment strategy. That means that you're not picking winners. You just try to get exposure to a well-diversified portfolio, like a good sample, a representative sample from a population, something like that. This is pretty much statistics. So what we are trying to do is to bring this kind of exposure to the whole extent of the Cardano ecosystem, with one single asset, and that asset will be the Cardano index. That is like the one product. So we're going to create a factory that will create a lot of financial product. The first product will be the Cardano index, and that product will ease the process of investment and getting exposure to the Cardano wealth creation process that we are going through, and we will go through in the next 3-4 years. So that is one point. Then the other point is that we want to make it easier for fund managers, for DAOs. Let's say you're a DAO and you want to create an asset that will benefit your community, but you don't want to hold the asset, you don't want to build the infrastructure, you just want to create the asset. Well, you will be able to create that asset using MAYZ. You can become a fund manager as a DAO, for example, or as a fund manager. If you are a professional in finance, you may have your clients in the right now we are going through. Last week was like an amazing week in which the institutional adoption is started taking off with BlackRock, with Deutsche Bank, and other institutions. Most of them are applying to different authorizations to provide some services, crypto services. So there will, not right now, but maybe in a year or so, there will be a lot of fund managers that will be interested in providing their services into these communities. So MAYZ will be a tool for them, because they will not have the hassle to custody the assets, which is a legal issue from their side. So that's another thing that is pretty good. So we have like three user persona, you may say. they use the investor, the Cardano user, the like the DAO, and fund managers, professional fund managers. These are like the three most obvious cases that will benefit from this platform, from this infrastructure.
Thank you for that amazing breakdown. I think it has to be from your content creator side. The way that you explain things is very well put together. I really do appreciate you touching on who the stakeholders in MAYZ are, as you just mentioned, the investor, the DAO, and the fund managers, and exactly how it's all going to work. Now, I do have a few responses I want to touch on. So, number one, I completely agree with you. I think that adoption is incoming, as we've seen with multiple, fund management platforms here in the US applying for recent Bitcoin spot ETFs and other financial instruments to allow regular people to invest in crypto. What really took my my breath away was when I read an article about a platform trying to offer crypto for people's retirement, right? Traditionally,
Yes.
you're only looking at like super safe, quote unquote, stocks that you invest in for your retirement. But we're now at the point where they're even beginning to think about adopting crypto for people's life savings. So I think we really are at a pivotal time. And a platform like MAYZ is jumping into this space, I think, at just the right time. Again, before the fund managers come in order to be able to say, hey, when they do come in, here we have some products that you guys are already somewhat familiar with. And if you're a fund manager with existing experience, well, come and join, the MAYZ protocol, and you can basically leverage and create these funds like you're used to doing, but within the regular or traditional finance space. So I wanted to highlight there, I think the opportunity here is extremely huge for what a platform like MAYZ is doing. And then I also wanted to touch on the fact that you'd mentioned, investing in multiple assets, kind of like a quote unquote sample. I think investing in numbers provides a certain level of risk adversity, but it also provides a little bit of safety, right? You may not necessarily get the gains that you get when you put your entire bag in one token, right? If that token goes to the moon, obviously your bag also goes to the moon. But let's say that, we look at the downside, which I think is a part that a lot of people don't always consider. If you put a lot of your assets or all your assets in one basket and that basket fails, well, then goes your whole portfolio. Go ahead.
Actually, you just said a few things that are pretty interested and are correlated. First, that these pension funds are start looking into these volatile assets, and you say, oh, why? Why? Because if they are trying to be conservative, why they may be interested in investing in volatile assets? And then you mentioned that you can also invest in one asset and go to the moon, or go to the crash and get wrecked. And the key concept here is the systematic risk in and the concept of risk management in investment. Those that are the winners are not the short-term gamers, but the long-term. And in the long term, the risk management is the most important thing you have to bear in mind, because the compound interest and power, which is the compound returns that go on top of all other returns, take care of the return side. The problem is, if you have a bad risk management strategy, you may lose all your gains in a bad play. So you have to be very careful about that. And why a volatile asset like crypto assets may be interested to be included in a retirement fund? The point is that for a financial investor, a diversified investor, the total risk, which is the volatility, is irrelevant. The relevant risk is the systemic risk, which is measured by beta. Beta is the Greek letter that represents how an asset behaves in relate to the market, to the whole market. That is the beta. So you may, as an asset, you may have a huge volatility, but you may have a beta close to one. And if that is the case, is not is that asset is not riskier than Coca-Cola stock, for example, which is around one, or even it may be less riskier or less riskier than, for example, Google, which has a beta of 1.5, for example. So the beta concept, which is of course pretty much technical, is the real risk that we should be measuring. And all of the crypto asset has a low correlation in general, and are getting lower correlation to the stock market. So, or we at least have less correlation than the stock market itself. So, investing in crypto, at least a small proportion, is a smart move, or is a no-brainer move for any fund manager. The problem is not that, but the problem is the liquidity. If you don't have enough liquidity in the market, a fund manager, or a pension fund is not going to invest that, because they have like some criteria. And the other point is decentralization.
I think to your liquidity, that's I think what is impending on really incoming once these bigger players come in. So I think liquidity, that point is about to get fixed very soon, especially when we begin to see platforms like BlackRock, Fidelity, etc., come in with their $1 trillion of assets that they manage directly into the crypto space. So again, thank you for that perspective there. The beta thing I actually was not really aware of. So that is really good to hear that, when it comes to this, there are other factors, because we all know that crypto is very volatile. And I think a lot of us can attest to that if you've been in the market over the course of the last year, when we went from really euphoric highs to really fear mongering lows, right? So hopefully the end is near. And as we begin to get out of this bear market, we're going to see more institutional adoption. But let's bring things back home to MAYZ. So jumping into what you guys are doing, are there any sort of investing criterias that are on the platform that you guys are taking a look at when it comes to either creating an index fund or allowing users to actually use or leverage the MAYZ protocol? Are you guys doing any KYC? Are you guys doing any AML background checks? Or is this going to be a platform that is open to all with none of those checks in place? Talk a little bit about what is actually needed in order to create a fund, but then also be an eligible user to either purchase or manage a fund on MAYZ.
Well, first, in our vision, KYC and ML are not needed in this protocol, because this protocol will be fully decentralized. So once it is deployed on Cardano network, will no longer be our protocol, because it will be the protocol that will be a code that works by its own rules. So from that perspective, we don't need that kind of onboarding procedures, at least in the foreseeable future. I cannot guess what is going to happen in 5 years, but at first, this will be a protocol like any other protocol. So there will be no need for KYC. Of course, that functionality may come in the future. You may have like two type of funds: KYC funds and not KYC funds, because there may be some interest in having KYC, and if that is the case, and there's market, and there's a use case for that, okay, so be it. That's okay. I'm not against this by itself. I only try to understand what is the actual possibility for a human being that may be left behind by its own country. So putting this kind of barrier of entries from my ethical standpoint are not correct, but there may be a feature in future releases of the project. That's regarding that. Then you asked me the criteria. Regarding Cardano index specifically, the criteria will be to create a 20, 25, maybe 30 tokens, fund tokens with 2025 tokens with different projects. And our goal is to that these 25 30 tokens will represent as good as possible the Cardano ecosystem complexity. So the idea is to have some DeFi projects, an NFT project, DEX, utilities, wallets. So we will have like a diversified portfolio. The criteria will be that. Will of course there will be a curation that the projects are high quality. Right now we are working on several projects, signing partnerships. So most of the tokens will have partnerships with MAYZ probably. It's not going to be a condition, but it's going to be a show of goodwill to work together, because MAYZ as a platform will not only provide the functionality of investing in those tokens, but will be a great place to get information about those projects. So if we have a good relationship, it will be easier for us to create maybe APIs or create different ways of keeping the platform as updated as possible from the informational standpoint. So the investor actually is not only able to invest, but also to analyze some stats, to see news, and to understand what is happening within the portfolio of their choosing. So that is basically that. Of course, there should be a project with certain level of liquidity, as we were talking, or certain amount of token in circulation in regard to the total or the maximum supply. So there will be some criteria for the Cardano index. For the other indexes or the funds, the idea is to have the less criteria as possible, the minimum viable criteria. So there may be some white list of tokens in the future, not in the first version, but maybe in the future. So the community, maybe we can have a community that approve or reject some projects specifically if they feel there may be dangerous or maybe scams or something like that, because we want to be as permissionless as possible. But of course, we have to take care of a few things. Being 100% permissionless may be a risk also. So we will have to understand how to handle that. By design, it will be permissionless, but there may be something, not in the first version, but in the coming versions. So before making any gateway or barrier of entry, we will want to experiment with the ecosystem and see what happens. That's why we will have a first version with a certain specific funds, and then we will move forward to open that to a broader community.
So what I want to do, again, thank you for that response, is just give you my two thoughts here on what you just mentioned. The first is going to be surrounding KYC. And I think KYC is necessary, but to an extent. We've seen some other projects here within the Cardano ecosystem specifically that have had or that have implemented KYC. And the community typically receives that in one of two ways, right? Either they're extremely for it or they're extremely against it, but it seems like it's always one or the other. And so I think, again, as you mentioned, for people that may be in areas of the world where they don't necessarily have the ability to KYC or do everything properly, we'll definitely want to make sure just to be able to give them a way to enter into funds. But I also think that KYC does bring a portion of people that we may not have now. Again, if we're looking at platforms like BlackRock, Fidelity, and all these other bigger players, they're looking for a platform that they know that they can trust, especially in regards to who's actually on the platform, right? So I think potentially splitting that out into a portion of the protocol where you can have people that maybe don't want to undergo KYC, invest in a certain amount of funds or a certain set of funds versus another set of the protocol or another portion of the protocol where they can, invest in KYC user funds or KYC members funds, then that also makes sense. So again, I kind of agree with you on there that it's not to say KYC is bad or good, but it's a fine line between, I think, adoption and building trust with the community that is on MAYZ. The next thing you touched on was surrounding vetting of projects. And again, I think that's going to be extremely key, right? As you're probably more than aware, we're in the crypto space, and a lot of times there's rugs, people that don't deliver. And so I think having some sort of metrics for the MAYZ protocol team to say, hey, we're looking at X, Y, and Z in order to be able to determine whether you're eligible to be hosted within our fund. And then also maybe taking a look at some sort of measurement to say how much of an allocation towards a project can be made towards a fund would also be key, right? Because just saying, hey, you're able to be allocated to a fund versus, hey, you're now 80% of a specific fund, which gives you or gives users a lot of exposure to that asset, can also be very risky, right? So I think those things like that will need to be in place. And then the very last thing I wanted to mention, which I do want to pivot into next, is going to be testing, right? So getting all of this out to people to then allow for them to test and see how this is all going to work is going to be key. So I'm going to let you respond, and then we're going to pivot into the testnet and the mainnet.
Yes, regarding what you just said, according to the or in relation to the proportion of the tokens within the fund, in the case of Cardano index, this proportion must represent the relationship between the size of the project in relation to the Cardano ecosystem. So if a project, let's say any project, represents 10% of the Cardano ecosystem, this portfolio, this index should have like around 10%, because the portfolio wants to represent the Cardano ecosystem, not a specific strategy. Of course, there will be projects that will, funds that will be focused on DeFi projects, NFT projects, degen projects, whatever, or blue chips, small caps, big caps. Well, there's enormous possibilities to create different funds that will be up to the creativity of the community. But for the Cardano ecosystem will be a relationship according to the weight of the project within the Cardano ecosystem. Going to the testnet and mainnet, this project will have, of course, a testnet, but I believe in Web3, at least in this stage, I don't buy that if you have an audit and if you have an excellent testing strategy, you are safe from problems. These protocols like Bitcoin, for like at the starting point, are tested by the community in real markets, in real conditions. So the point is, you need to start small enough to have a small enough, but not that small. So with a certain level of honeypot, so you will be attacked, and that's okay. We need to be attacked. We need to go through that in order to understand if the protocol is safe or not. So even though we will have, of course, a test strategy, we will be audited. For me, from my standpoint, I think the first few months in Mainnet are the ones that will say, okay, this product is desirable, is robust, is easy to use, and is secure. So for me, that is the real test, and that's my opinion.
I think that's fair. And I also think that this is all going to be an iterative process, right? Because there are so many unknowns and so many unknown unknowns that you just cannot plan for, right? If everybody was able to plan for every possible scenario, we would have a perfect world where there's no accidents and there's no issues, right? Now, granted, we make sure to put our best foot forward through the use of audits and things like that to prevent the risk and to prevent the likely outcome of things happening. But I couldn't agree with you more. As you guys actually launch in the mainnet, you're going to see people using the protocol in probably multiple different ways that you would have never thought or intended for the protocol to be used, right? And so I think that is going to be key. And taking a look and comparing this to Web 2, they follow what is called an MVP, a minimum
Yes.
viable product, right? Just get the minimum out there and let people iterate on that. As people begin to play around with it, they're going to give you guys suggestions. You guys take those suggestions, you implement them, and then you provide some sort of update, and then you push that out again in order to, number one, patch or fix anything that may need to be resolved. But then number two, also add additional enhancements and quality of life features to make their experience on the MAYZ protocol that much cleaner and that much smoother. And so there's two things I want to touch on here. We are coming up at about 35 or so minutes, and I want to respect your time. But before we close this video out, there's one thing that we have to talk about. That is going to be the ongoing sale for the MAYZ protocol. So do you mind talking about the sale that's going on right now and then giving us a little bit of information surrounding the utility of the actual MAYZ token?
Well, that's a fair point. We didn't discuss one of the key features of this protocol, which is the tokenomic. MAYZ is meant to be an utility token. So in order to create a fund, you will need to stake MAYZ to have a skin in the game. That would be a barrier of entry, because in order to create a fund, you need to have capital allocated into the protocol. So you will have, this is like a curation process, like some kind of curation process from any digital platform, but also skin in the game, in the sense that you won't waste the resources and the time of the people just because you just create a fund and just leave it there, because you will have real money invested in. So that is an incentive, a fair enough incentive for a truthful and rightful fund manager to create a fund and to try to make it as good as possible to be a success. Otherwise, you will have a lot of capital allocated into the protocol with no purpose at all, because the fund manager, what is the benefit of being a fund manager? You will have a fee. A fee will be charged to the um, to the investors that has asset under management, and that fee will go in a big proportion to the fund manager, as in a smaller proportion to the MAYZ users. I'm going to tell you how, and as a tiny proportion to the protocol. So the idea is this tokenomic, it will allow the protocol to have good, honest actors, because in order to attack, let's say you want to create um, a, um, a bad portfolio, and you want the people to lose money. Well, you can do that, but if you do that, you will hurt the protocol, and as your asset will be held by the protocol will be a stake, your MAYZ tokens, you will also be hurt by the problem you are creating. On the other hand, if you create a good fund, people will start investing in that fund. The fund will get much bigger, and as when the fund gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you will be incentivized to deposit more MAYZ, and that will bring the value of MAYZ. Will make MAYZ a more valuable asset, because it will be providing a good service for the community. The community will be paying in fees, and the total value locked into the contract that are the funds will increase. So in that scenario, there is like a virtual process that will bring value not only to the users but also to the fund manager, because he will be not only getting some rewards but also seeing the MAYZ tokens go up. So basically, the idea of the tokenomic is that you need the token to create the fund. You need the token to play other roles, because there are other roles that can be played, like the swap maker. You can create swaps. That means that you can create orders that will allow users to consume that orders. For example, you can create orders to mint new tokens or to burn tokens in an easy way, so an investor can buy the fund only with ADA. And that may seems kind of obvious. Say, okay, Diego, but an investor always going to buy this with ADA. Yes, that's true, but the fund contract only mint tokens when all the asset the collateral asset are deposited within the smart contract. So in order to mint, for example, one token from the Cardano index, you need to deposit 25 or 30 tokens. So that is going to be made by other players. We have the escrow and the swap players that will provide the liquidity to the protocol. So you not only need the fund manager, but also liquidity providers. And all of these roles will need to have MAYZ to provide those services. So the MAYZ token is basically an utility token. Right now we are going through an IPO. So if you want to support the projects, to get some MAYZ, you can allocate ADA to one mate stake pool. This is the pool that we are using to provide this IPO. And then there is an open early supported sale right now, that you can go to the MAYZ webpage, or go to you can go there and you will find the opportunity to mint NFTs and get MAYZ in the future when we launch the project, because right now we are only minting NFTs to fund the project. And those NFTs are like receipts for a certain amount of MAYZ that will be issued at the moment when the protocol goes live. So as soon as the protocol goes live, we will make an open sale, and during that and after that period, we will launch and distribute these first MAYZ tokens. So the protocol will start working. So if you, for example, get some MAYZ tokens, you will be able to delegate the tokens into the Cardano index and earn some of the rewards that the Cardano index fund will be generating. Because in that first fund, as we are going to be the manager, we are going to bootstrap these early adopters. So we will distribute a bigger piece of the rewards to the users. So the idea is, the utility of the token, to sum up, is to stake for being a fund manager, to stake for being a liquidity provider, or to delegate the token to a specific fund to support the fund, to show support. And in these three cases, you will get some rewards from the revenue of the protocol. So it's going to be sustainable as long as the protocol has some assets under management. It will be creating a native revenue for the different actors of this ecosystem.
I like that, Diego. It sounds like you guys are creating opportunities, it seems, for fund managers, number one, but then also MAYZ stakers, again, providing that little bit of utility for the token holders. And so one thing that you touched on there was the fact that you need the MAYZ token in order to actually begin to manage some of these assets, right? And so I think that's going to be key to have skin in the game because, again, that's going to incentivize these actors who are potentially creating these funds on the platform to then act in a positive way because their assets are also tied within the funds, right? As you mentioned, there's not going to be some sort of ability for bad actors to come into the space, create funds that they intentionally want to see tank, and then do that without they themselves also being affected. So I think people will think twice before taking that approach. Very lastly, did touch on the token pre-sale, which is going to be done through an NFT. And if I'm not mistaken, that NFT is acting as a bond in order to actually claim the actual MAYZ token once the token generation event occurs in the near future. So that said, we've touched on the testnet. We've touched a little bit on the mainnet. You did give us a rough outline for the testnet. I think you said around September of this year. I'm not going to really ask about the mainnet because, as you know, in this space, projects need time and timelines can put projects in a certain situation. And I don't want to do that here. But I do want to end this off here with just getting your perspective as to where you see the MAYZ protocol in the next 3, 4, 10 years from now. What is the future vision for what you guys are building today?
Well, if we make market fit, because you just mentioned earlier the concept of MVP. Right now, the first version of the project will be an MVP, quite a big MVP, but an MVP after all. And if we, I'm as an entrepreneur, I think that the market is the one who decide. It's not. Of course, you have to have a team, some ability, a good idea, whatever. But it's the market in the end which decide whose project are a big project or not. So I guess that will play out in the next bull run. But after that, MAYZ can become a great DeFi infrastructure for building complex and more complex financial services and financial the so-called financial engineer. When you create different kind of assets, uh, most of them are derivatives assets. The first one will be these funds, but this will not end here. For example, let me give you an example. Let's say we want to create a stable coin, another stable coin. Now we have DJet, that's okay. But let's say, and DJet is collateralized by ADA. But what happens if you create a stablecoin collateralized with an asset that is a diversified portfolio, which has a lesser volatility than even ADA? You may have a stronger asset to create a stable coin because as the asset has less volatility as other competitors, you need a lower threshold to liquidate position if you are going to use this mechanism. So I think there will be a lot of use cases for the tokens of the funds, and the funds can be very creative. For example, the other day, some guys say, okay, well, Diego, you can have a fund in which you have ADA, 50% ADA that is delegated to a certain pool, to a certain stake pool, and the other half can be, for example, the Cardano index. So you have a token that is you are a conservative guy, and you don't have to have to have your own portfolio 100% invested like in stocks, so to speak, and you want to have 50% and 50. This is the rule of the thumb for financial investment. When you have 50% bond, 50% stocks, so you can have that. So there will be different use case for the funds, and the tokens that are provided by the funds, the liquidity tokens, will have a lot of use cases, more use cases. So we will probably be like a base layer for the other services that will create on top of the protocol. So part of the roadmap will be to enhance these other services on top of our protocol. And of course, the protocol can move to derivatives like options, stock options, or delta zero portfolio strategies. And other ideas we have in mind, for example, how to provide liquidity to fractionalize an NFT. We are working on that idea. Right now, these MAYZ funds are thought to include only fungible assets. But what if we wanted to have funds with non-fungible assets, NFTs basically? How can you provide liquidity to the fractionalized piece of this NFT? Well, we are working on that also. We are working on a model in which you have the NFT as collateral, you have a certain amount of ADA as liquidity provider, and then this amount of ADA, which is a proportion of the total assets under management, will allow people to get in and to get out with an incentivized formula in which as a lot of people start selling their proportion of the token of these assets that cannot be divided, this liquidity will start to drain, and is draining. It will create incentive for other guys to provide more data or to buy these the tokens that were sold that represent a right on the collateral. So there are different things that we are working on. So if the market give us the thumbs up in the MVP, there's a lot of things coming out of that. And we are a team that is pretty effective, cost effective. So it's not that expensive to develop things in Latin America. So with not that much money, we can create amazing things, and that's a strength we have against other countries in which you need a lot of money to invest to create certain products. So a lot of things we will come if we have the sum up. That's key from my opinion.
From the sounds of it, I think you guys will do just fine. Obviously, you guys have been building for quite a bit of time, and as you just mentioned, you guys are a pretty lean team, which I think is great, especially right now under the current market conditions where there may not be a lot of liquidity flowing around. When you touched on NFTs as well as derivatives, the first thing that came to mind for me was how much untapped liquidity is in those types of investments and those types of assets, right? So I think that would be a huge value proposition that the MAYZ protocol team can take advantage of, whether that's, next year, 3, 4, 5 years, and just as the ecosystem matures, right? So I think that's going to be something that I'm going to be keeping an eye out on. I know there's been a few other platforms that have talked about tapping into the value of NFTs and allowing for NFT loans to take place, but not necessarily investing in NFT indices or NFT indexes. So again, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of market share up for grabs. And if MAYZ is able to execute, I think that will pay you guys in rewards very handsomely. And so I think that's going to bring us to the close of today's interview. Diego, I want to thank you so much for your time. The very last thing I just want to turn over to you is just, are there any closing comments that you want the community here to take away as a part of this, when it comes to MAYZ, what you guys are building, the Presale, the Testnet? What is the final thing that you want the community to walk away with after watching this video?
No, I just wanted to say to the community that every piece of code that we write is its main idea, its main objective is to create value in the Cardano ecosystem in general, not only in the MAYZ community. Most of our code will be eventually and with the time open source. So we know that we are bringing a piece of technology that is great, that will have other use cases. We are thinking in this use case, but the way in which we are working on the smart contracts and the way in which we are combining different ways to interact with the blockchain, with the Cardano blockchain in the current stage in which there are not a lot of experience. It's not like in Ethereum, which is there's a lot of experience. Right now, we are just the pioneers, the OGs of all of this. So What I'm most happy is that I know that we are bringing a piece of software that is worth for the Cardano community in general. And whether or not we make a success or a hit or a killer app, as some call this success, I'm already happy of the value we are bringing to the ecosystem in which I'm pretty much into it. So I will benefit from this, of course, but it will benefit a lot of people within the Cardano ecosystem, and I think that's great because we are being part of the history of the Cardano. That is actually, from my standpoint, the third largest, more important network in the crypto community in general.
Thank you again, Diego, for your time. Thank you for your contributions to the space, and thank you to the rest of your team for what you guys are building here. Again, for you viewers watching at home, this is going to be MAYZ, unlocking the potential of your Cardano, as well as just allowing you to tap into all these different platforms in the Cardano ecosystem by allowing you to invest in indices or in different funds. So that said, Diego, I'll be leaving the links to all of the MAYZ socials down in the description below. I'll leave the link to your guys' ongoing ISPO, as well as your ongoing pre-sale for any members that are interested in finding out more about what you guys are building. And I look forward to having you on the channel in the future again, especially as you guys launch that testnet and get ready to gear
Yes.
up for the main net. So that said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your morning. Again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.